maybe we'll come back to the subject later on in the podcast. I think what's pertinent right now is that in our own universe, which is what we should be focusing on, we continue the trend of the 50% deals and retaining 50% rights of players we are, for lack of a better word, almost loaning out for an extended period of time, in the sense that we're basically trying to come up with a solution for all these failed loans where we send players out on loan, it doesn't work out, they don't play, and it's not the situation we had signed up for. We spend decent amounts of money investing in these young players, and instead of developing them, we send them to situations where they're frustrated, they don't play, and their development stalls. And obviously that's a lose-lose for everyone. It's a lose for the club that's hosting them for that period of time. It's a lose for us. It's a lose for the player. It's this precious, precious years of development being wasted. So it seems like our solution to that is, well, okay, you don't want to play the player. You took him on. Maybe if you actually own the player, you will play him. There's no better example of this than Javi Sanchez, who was loaned to Real Valladolid, and we were all excited. Remember, we were like, Ronaldo Nazario is going to help us. Valladolid is going to be the guinea pig. They're going to take on all of our loanees, and Nazario is just going to develop. He's going to treat them like his own kids. It's going to be great. Javi Sanchez goes there. Lunin goes there. Neither of them play at all. And in Lunin's case, at least there was
Jorge de Frutos too.
Jorge de Frutos. And in Lunin's case, at least there was like a legit reason where Masip was a really, really good goalkeeper ahead of him. And and just funny comments in the chat about this. And so, but like Javi Sanchez was hilarious just in the sense that like the day after we officially said, okay, sold, he's your player now. Literally the day after he just started, he was a starter after that. 8 appearances on loan to Valladolid, and then the day he was officially signed for them, he starts playing every game. So we're saying now, like, okay, if you guys want to play our loanees, first of all, why did you take them in the first place? But second of all, and it's also our fault, not putting blame on them completely. We have to make sure that we're sending them to the right place. But also, maybe if he owns the player, if they own the player, then they'll be invested in developing him. And so that's been the hope now with the Mario Gila, even look at Jovic, although I think that ship has probably sailed by now. And if retaining 50% of his rights is really through a future sale. And now Takefusa Kubo. He's an arm's length away if it works out for him under Alguacil and it goes well. So I kind of hijacked a little bit of what you said in the article as well. So I want to turn it over to you to get your thoughts on the situation. And obviously this was on your mind, right? Because you wrote about it. I mean, it was a huge topic this week for us.
Yeah, and I'm not going to rehash too much from the article. If for folks who haven't read it, you can check it out on Managing Madrid. But there are some things that I didn't mention in there that I have thought about since, and just one of those options that I wanted to talk through with you. So one thing I'm thinking about that I've thought about regarding the 50% retaining the 50% retention clause, or even just a buyback clause, is, and I kind of brought this up in the article, but I think I can extrapolate it on it more, is in regards to someone like Reinier. It's really difficult to do because you purchase him for 35 million. And so even after 2 years at Borussia Dortmund, we still have 24 million left to amortize on his contract. So you'd have to sell him for 24 million to at least break even. And so no club is going to do that with Reinier right now. His value isn't there. Nobody's going to do that, especially if you have to insert a buyback clause. So I think that's why the Benfica deal has kind of died in the water, because Benfica wanted to buy him outright and they were willing to include a buyback clause, but they wanted to buy him for I think it was 10, maybe 15 million max. And Real Madrid only wanted a buyback clause in there, but the initial fee wasn't big enough. So the 10 to 15 million isn't big enough to cover the 24 million we still have left to amortize. And so that's where you're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place with Reinier. And do you just cut your losses and let him go there, which I would have done. I think that would have been the right thing to do. Or will he end up at a club like Real Valladolid, which we've already mentioned? Yeah, it seems like the perfect spot, but in reality, we've seen what it's like for especially attacking players to go to relegation battling sides. And that I don't know. I'm not in favor of it. I'd rather see him in an environment where he's part of a winning team, can play Champions League football. I've talked about Shakhtar Donetsk in the past. Like that type of environment, I think would be much better than a Real Valladolid. And if that means you have to sell them and retain a buyback clause or 50% clause, I think you do that. But the problem with guys like Renier, Rodrigo, Vinicius is when you invest that much, you almost have to keep them in the Real Madrid first team. And I think it was a mistake to loan Renier out. He should have just stayed playing. He should have had that half season with Castilla, kind of continued with that the following season, and just kind of followed the Vinicius path, the Rodrigo path, where you play interchange. And maybe it would have been a little bit longer in Castilla for him rather than those other two. But I think when you invest that much in the player, especially the young player, I think you have to keep them at home because it doesn't really work the other way around.
Yeah, I mean, and the reality was like if he's going to go to Dortmund and not play and just train with them, it would have been better if he just stays not play and train with us and at least let the influence and the character, the winning mentality of the Modric's, the Benzemas rub off on him a little bit and let those guys, those veterans, take him under their wing. And the one that you and I have talked about, and you wrote about this in your article, was the point about getting Castilla to Segunda. If I were in charge of anything, which thank God I'm not in charge of anything, so I don't sink this club. But if I just had like the keys for a couple years, I would just stack Castilla with every single talented player we'd have. Get those guys like the last 2-3 years. If you just pump Castilla with like Ashraf, Reguilon probably that ship had sailed by that point, but like every single player we had in the youth team, everyone who went out on loan, just made them really good. Renier, Kubo, let them just destroy Segunda B, get to Segunda, probably even do really well in Segunda, but then you can just keep them there, and then at that point, once they're in Segunda, you don't have to take talent out constantly. You don't even have to worry about the Arribases, the Miguel so much because it's a perfect scenario. They're playing weekend, and Segunda's a decently high level, and you can just call them up whenever you want. I think that's the model. If you don't have the club you want to partner with, like the Valladolid that didn't work. I mean, in years past, it was Getafe. We had some good ones there. But if you don't have that club, then it's got to be Castilla. Or this is the other solution, I think, the 50% deals or the buybacks, or the situations like Carvajal going out, literally developing there as a Bayer Leverkusen player and then coming back as a more polished, better player. That's the route. That's the route to go. So, by the way, what's the loan tracker list right now? Is it just Brahim?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. And I don't know that it'll be more than that, which is crazy. But we kind of, I think the loan, it was kind of fitting that the loan, and I want to go back to what you said before, but let me finish this thought. I think it's kind of fitting that the loan tracker almost comes to an end when the Mbappe saga comes to an end, because it was really what Real Madrid was doing was trying to develop and prepare these kids to eventually become part of the Mbappe generation and form as his kind of backroom staff to help support him. Like that's who Odegaard, Ashraf, Reguilon, Ceballos, that's who all these guys, Vallejo, that's who they were supposed to be. That was the intention. Or they were going to be used as chips to pay for Mbappe, sell them off and use them to pay for Mbappe. And ultimately, with that coming to an end, I think the loan trackers kind of come to an end. But we'll see. I think the other part of it is kind of like everything I wrote about in the article. Like it's been too hit or miss. And so I think Real Madrid's recognized that as well. And you can see a clear pivot. And to the point on getting Castilla to Segunda, and a lot of people in the chat have been saying like this is the single biggest issue on the men's side and that it's what they really want to see. And I think, I mean, what we've seen with the intention with Sergio Arribas it still remains to be seen whether he stays through the summer. But if he does, I think that's a clear signal from Real Madrid that they want to get Castilla promoted. And I honestly think it's worth it for that short term developmental hit, for that long term gain, especially when we're gonna I'm fairly confident we're gonna continue with this youth policy, and this whole policy is gonna get recycled again throughout the next few years, and so I think it's really, I think if you can get Castilla to Segunda, it's a game changer. And so if you pay, think about this, Keon. Like if you pay a guy like Sergio Ribas, because all the rumors are he's going to get a new contract. If you pay him, you're going to be able to pay him more than you would if he was going to go to Real Valladolid, Malaga, Girona, like a Segunda side or an upcoming La Liga side. Real Madrid has that ability. And so you just convince him, look, take this new contract. We're going to give you a pay increase. You're going to make more than you would, and help us get to Segunda. And then we'll let you either become the leader of that side and you'll get integrated into the Real Madrid first team like a Nacho, or we'll let you have the pick of your team. We'll let you go, for a discounted rate, whatever, for next summer. And I think you can sell players on that, especially honestly, at the end of the day, we all know money talks. And like these guys, that they're going to make, if it's 1 year of their career where they're going to make more money than they normally would going to a different professional side, then yeah, I'm sure they'll be willing to do it. And I'm sure you can convince a lot of guys. And so I think it looks like Real Madrid's kind of pivoting towards that. And I think that somebody asked if Real Madrid see, is maybe Florentino and the club management looking to looking to create that buffer so that we don't get too clogged up with talent. And I think that because you don't want to be in a position where you're retaining so much talent at Castilla that you have all these other guys that are kind of ready to make that jump, but you don't have room for them, and then they go somewhere else and explode. Like, we don't want to get into that position. And so I think it's a delicate balance, but I think incorporating this Real Madrid C maybe helps mitigate that. We'll see. But yeah, I do think there has been maybe a strategic shift.
But I think that the concern about overloading the Castilla team with talent and maybe losing out on some of them is a problem, like, that to me is, I don't know if that's necessarily a problem that we actually get to, because if you look at Castilla in the past years, we don't have a problem of we don't necessarily have this huge problem of Castilla being overloaded with talent and we can't hold on to them. The problem generally is that we're just not trusting them in the first team at all. And so, like, to me, the cream will rise to the top. If you had Castilla, if you had the competition of these players, young players coming in, making Castilla better, plus then you have all the players in Castilla now competing with these players, I think it's a healthy competition, and I think you'll have just players, you'll see the best players rise to the top, and you can kind of start to assess, like, who's good and who's not, like who can we actually trust and take a gamble on. So yeah, this has got to be on the top of the agenda. Like, it has to be done. It's a clear solution to a lot of our developmental problems. So what do you think? It looks like you're about to jump in before I change something.
Yeah, well, I wanted to ask you about the third option, which is a little bit out there. I recognize that, but I think, honestly, I don't know if it's legal, but I don't see why it wouldn't be. But I think could work in the right context and with the right incentives for the prospective club. So I kind of laid out all these different incentives that you could put. If a club agreed to kind of take on our loanees, they would also get the option to buy these players, buy academy players in general for a discount, and even get kind of almost like finder's fees for any players that come back to the Real Madrid first team. And I think when you put financial incentives there, and you also kind of give a club the ability not only to attain a lot of great young talent, but kind of purchase it and make it their own and have these guys have more of an identity with the club and connection, because a lot of supporters, what I wrote was like a lot of supporter, you look at any, like even these Real Sociedad supporters, a lot of them have been fervently against Take Kubo coming in, and they hate the 50%
Really?
clause. Like, yeah, if you look at like Real Sociedad Twitter, I've gone down that path. Like they're not in favor of this move. And anytime, like I've
Hmm.
always, anytime we send a player out on loan, I always kind of look at the club's, like I try and find like what the fans are saying on Twitter and stuff, and they're always against loanee. They hate getting loanees because
Well, how did they
they
feel
want to
about
promote
Odegaard?
they didn't want Odegaard either,
Hmm.
um, which goes to show you. But it's because they want to promote they think they have their own youth players that are good enough to step up. They want players that are going to be at the club for long term, or even if they're not there for the long term, they can at least profit off of. And so I think you have to kind of put those incentives in place. And so maybe a scenario is you loan Reina Jesus and then you sell at a discounted rate, and we'd obviously retain a buyback clause, Antonio Blanco and Mario Gila. And like that's the connection that club has. And so then they get two great players that are their own, and then one player that's on loan. Like that's kind of the scenario. And then if Reina Jesus comes back and plays for the Real Madrid first team, you get 5 million euros. And that's kind of like
To
your
the
finder's
player, you
fee.
mean?
No, to the club,
I
to the
see.
loan, to
So,
the
okay.
club that's loaning the player. So if Rainier plays a year on loan to whatever club, let's say Real Valladolid, and then he does well enough that Real Madrid incorporate him back into the first team, Real Madrid then pay Real Valladolid 5 million euros, almost like a finder's fee, and or a reward basically for that player coming back. And I think if you put like those types of incentives in there, you could really have a partnership where this club then, after maybe 3 to 5 years, has developed enough talent and has purchased enough young guys that are at a discounted rate, or had a couple finder's fees come in, where they are maybe no longer trying to fight relegation. They're a mid-table club, or and then eventually competing for Europe. Like you can help this club bolster, like you've developed a partnership that then helps this club reach a new level, and then the partnership can end. And you, by that point, if it is that successful, you'll have plenty of other clubs queuing up, like in the line, trying to do this type of partnership deal with you. So honestly, I think it could work, but I've never seen anything like, the only thing I've seen similar to it is what City's doing by buying all these football clubs. But that's kind of, it's still different because they own the clubs. And so they own Girona, they own NYCFC, they own all these different clubs. And so they can just send players out on loan there, or sell them to their own club, and it works for them. But we can't do that. So this is kind of a workaround.
What's up, Madridistas on YouTube? This is your boy Kian Sabani. What you just watched was a pin-sized hole, very small glimpse of a much larger discussion that was well over 1 hour. And if you want access to the full episode, it's over on patreon.com/managingmadrid, where you get a ton of exclusive content. If you sign up, it's only $3 a month, and you actually get a discount if you pledge the whole year. You get 1 month free. Not only do you get access to every single future thing we do, as long as you're a patron, including emergency signing podcasts that go exclusively over on patreon.com/managingmadrid, plus Champions League post-game shows live on Zoom, and in addition, at least 2 episodes per week that only go over up on patreon.com/managingmadrid. So if you want access to all of that and you like our work, just go over there and get inside this ever-growing Real Madrid family. We will welcome you with open arms, give you a ton of value. We will basically be in your lives every single day. Anytime you need timely Real Madrid analysis that's not sensationalized, that's not clickbaity, that is real analysis, objective analysis, we got you every day, basically. If not every day, 5 to 6 to 7 days minimum, we got you. This is our life. This is our bread and butter. And if you want to support it and you want to get access to the good stuff, patreon.com/managingmadrid. We'll see you on the inside, and Hala Madrid.